So in the business world, a lot of times meetings can be seen as unproductive and time consuming. How many times have you heard the phrase, this meeting could have been an email? Well, with Team GPS group meetings, your leadership team can run efficient, purposeful meetings that people actually look forward to because we help make sure the right things are getting done. With a structured agenda and data-driven insights, you'll track progress, align goals, and turn discussions into actionable steps. So in Team GPS, come to my meetings section. I'll identify my group meetings and pick which meeting I'm going to go into. So when I start the meeting, I have the ability to start it as a leader. I'll identify who's present, who's been scheduled for the meeting. Maybe somebody's out, maybe everybody's here, hopefully, and I'll start the meeting. Once I start it, it's time for our check-in. You'll note that the timer at the top here is going to continue to count, so we see how long the meeting is going for, and each section has a defined interval so that we can make sure that we're keeping ourselves on track and moving forward. Check-in is usually pretty simple. We just want to take a second to stop working in the business and get our heads into the right space to work on the business. This is a great place for icebreakers or just sharing some good positive news for everybody. Next up is the review of our scorecard. We'll identify the most important numbers that the business needs in order to make sure that we're improving, and each person in the meeting will be responsible for reporting on some of these numbers. The idea here is that we want to make sure we're not spending too much time digging into the numbers. We just want to see the reporting so we can see if we're on track or off track for anything. And if there's anything to be discussed, we can simply create an issue that we can tackle later by identifying it here so that we're not spending too much time talking about a particular number that may be off track. Next up is a review of our goals. We've already set these in place. We've identified that these are the things that we need to work on as a team in order to improve certain aspects of the business. And so all we're doing here is making sure that we're identifying, just like with the scorecard, whether we're on track or off track, whether somebody needs help. We can always review any particular milestones. If something is off track, again, we can simply drop it down with our issues list over here. We'll have a headline section, so I can identify great news that I want to share. Maybe we've onboarded a new client. Maybe we've onboarded a new colleague that I want to share the news with the team. Just a great place to make sure that we're cascading this information on down. We'll also have an opportunity to keep track of tasks, to-dos, items that are helping us solve some of the issues we have, and these will help keep us accountable week over week. So I can see here which to-dos are expected to be done and which are overdue, and we can talk about those as well, all keeping in mind the time and making sure that we're discussing the right issues. Next up is that issues list. Now, this is a persistent issues list that's going to be maintained here. Everybody in the meeting can add to this list over the week, over the course of the week during the workday, so that we can all talk about it if they need help. Once we get to this section, it's as simple as identifying, what are the top 3 things that we want to talk about? Well, I want to talk about the MQL to SQL. I want to talk about customers in red, and the company holiday party is coming up, so I know we need to track that. And so now we can make sure that we're all on the same page about what we need to discuss, and once we finish those, it's a matter of just picking the next issue. Once we've talked about what needs to happen here, maybe we need to create some tasks that will help us kind of accomplish fixes for these problems. And I can simply assign them to anybody here in the meeting, give those due dates for when we expect that to be done, typically a week or 2 out. And that way we're recording that task so that it's tracked here on our task list, so that next week when we come in, we can report on whether that task was done or not. If we've solved that issue, we'll simply mark it as solved, and it'll go over to our solved issues list here in this meeting, so we can always keep track of what we're solving. And finally, once we're done with this, and the bulk of the meeting here is spent on the issues list, we'll go to our wrap-up section. Here's where we'll see any tasks that were created, any past due tasks, any issues that we solved, and we'll have the ability to rate the meeting between 1 and 10. Now, this is completely subjective, right? A lot of people will have different criteria. Maybe we're talking about whether people showed up on time or we ended the meeting on time. Maybe we're talking about making sure that the right stakeholders are there. Whatever your criteria is, you'll basically rate the meeting here so that you can report on how effective these meetings are going. Once we're done, everybody entering in their scores, let's say we've got an 8 here, this person gave it a 10, you're giving it a 9, you've given it an 8.5. Then we can go ahead and complete that meeting, and we'll shoot that recap email to everybody in the meeting. We'll show any statistics here about the average rating, how much time it took, what issues we solved, and that's that. That's how we can keep track of those meetings and keep ourselves accountable and driving the business forward.